welcome to Artastic here at the Grand Rapids Area Library. I'm Diana, and today I'm going to lead you through a really cool project based on the sky. So if you look up outside at night at the sky, think about what you might see. Okay, there are stars, of course, there are planets. Planets are usually a little brighter than the stars. The moon will be out if it's a clear night. And if you were out last week, I bet a lot of you saw something really special. The aurora borealis, or the northern lights, were spectacular. They were saying it's like the brightest it's been in many, many years. So I hope you got out to see the beautiful colors and shapes and all the things that were happening in the sky. What's kind of cool about this time of year is that it gets dark very early. So I was driving home last night at 5:30 and it was already dark. So you can go out after school or after dinner maybe and look up at the sky and see it, all the beautiful things. In the summertime, it's probably past your bedtime by the time it gets dark and you don't get to see as much. So this is a really good time of year to get out and enjoy the beautiful sky and all the things that are in it during the evening and night hours. Today, we're going to be doing a special art project based on a famous painting by an artist named Vincent van Gogh. You might have heard of him, maybe not, but it's a really cool painting that you probably have seen in just your life as you are looking through books and such. So if you haven't already, make sure you go to the Grand Rapids Library and pick up your art kit. It's available at the desk. So let's see what's in it today. So today in your art kit, you've got some paper. So there are 2 sheets of kind of a heavy watercolor paper. There should be a sheet of black paper. There is a glue stick in here, I believe. There it is. And then there's an extra special bag. And in this, we have a bunch of oil pastels. There they are. Lots of different colors. Sometimes they're called crayons. You might have heard that's like a brand name, but they're called oil pastels, and I'll be talking about them as we work. So you really don't need anything extra. Maybe a tissue or Kleenex, as we are going to be blending some colors and it gets a little bit messy. And that's all you should need. So go get your kit all organized and I'll meet you back here. All right, so in your kit you have 2 sheets of paper. We're just going to be doing one today, and the other one you can save to do later with your wonderful art supplies that you got. So here is the painting that we're going to be basing our art on today. So Vincent van Gogh lived in Europe in the late 1800s. He died in 1890. So he lived quite a long time ago. And during his painting career, he only sold 1 painting. So he was not famous. No one really liked his art. It was something that nobody really did much with. And it wasn't until after he died that people started to enjoy his paintings. And now this painting here, called Starry Night, is probably one of the world's most famous painting, and is worth millions and millions, maybe even billions of dollars. His style was very different for the late 1800s. It's called post-impressionism. And impressionism is kind of a thing where you don't draw things exactly as you see them. You maybe have seen paintings where it looks exactly, almost like a photograph of, maybe there's some apples sitting on a table, or a bouquet of flowers, or even a landscape with houses and buildings and mountains. Vincent van Gogh painted in a style where he liked very bright colors, and he layered the colors on top of each other. His objects were not very clear, like you weren't really sure what they are. So for example, in the Starry Night, you can probably notice these are houses, there's a church, but what is this thing right here? You know, it kind of, maybe it's a tree or a bush. I'm not sure. It's it's not super clear, and that's what his style shows. So it's a really fun style where you can kind of do your own thing and you don't have to have things look exactly like they really are. Interesting thing about Van Gogh is that he was colorblind. So, which would be kind of hard if you were a painter or an artist and you couldn't tell colors. How would you know what color to put, you know, the sky and the moon and so forth? But he did it, so it was pretty interesting. So the Starry Night is one of my favorites because you can see the movement. To me, it's a night sky. We got this moon, we've got some stars, we've got some movement. Maybe the wind was blowing, or it's maybe the clouds, or could it be the aurora borealis, the northern lights? Who knows, right? In the foreground, which is the front of the painting, you can see that it's night. There's light on in the little houses. You can see a little bit of detail, but in the background, these must be hills or mountains or just kind of a suggestion of that, which is kind of fun. So we're gonna do our painting in the style of Vincent van Gogh. It will not look exactly like this, okay? It will maybe look a little bit different. So we have, here's one that I did earlier, and you can see that I did the background with the swirls. I added some stars and the moon. And then for the foreground, I thought it would be fun to actually, instead of using a scissor, but to tear the paper into shapes to suggest things in the foreground. So this is kind of what we're going to do. Now, if you've ever used oil pastels before, they're kind of a neat art supply in that they're sort of oily, which I guess is what they're called, oil pastels, right? You can blend the colors. They're a little different than crayons. With crayons, once they're on the paper, it's pretty much on the paper. But with oil pastels, you can blend the color. So to start out, we're going to get some blues for the sky and some yellows and oranges for the stars and the moon. Now I'm gonna start out, if you remember the original painting, you can kind of see the outline of the moon, and then he just has some lines. He did oil painting, so he used oil paints, but we're gonna do the same with our oil pastels to kind of go out from the moon and show that it's glowing kind of through the sky. That's kind of the idea. But you can see the moon is darker and then it gets lighter as it goes out. And then the same thing with the stars. His stars are just little dots. If you want to do actual star shapes, you certainly could do that too. So I'm going to start out with my moon, and you can do like a quarter moon, a half moon. You could do a full moon if you want to do that. I'm doing a quarter moon, and you can see when you use oil pastels, you're going to get a lot of little crumbs, but that's okay. I usually just kind of rub with my finger, and your fingers are going to get all oily and colored. That's fine. And then I blow away any of those crumbs. Now, the cool thing about oil pastels is you can build on top. So I want my moon to be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna put some orange on there. Isn't that cool? And I'm gonna blend it in. So that my orange and my yellow, if it's too dark, you can add a little more yellow on top until you get it where you like it. You can also use a Kleenex or a paper towel, and you can see that will take color away. If you didn't, if you thought, oh, that orange is too dark, you can do that as well, okay? Now, once we get the basic moon shape, we can do the lines around. Now in the Starry Night, he does little lines. See how I'm doing little lines? So if I take the painting again, you can see all the little lines that they're like little strokes of his paintbrush. So that's what I'm gonna do as I'm putting the glowing out from the moon. I'm just gonna put these little strokes. And now I can go back in. I still have a little bit of orange on my finger. So I can go in and just kind of, it's okay. Remember, this is not supposed to look real. So I can do my moon like that. Okay, now I've got some stars I wanna do. So I'm gonna make my stars just little orange dots. And you decide how many you want. And then I'm gonna put yellow around them. So I'm making kind of bigger circles around. And then I'm gonna smear again. And the orange is gonna kind of mix with the yellow. And remember, there's no right or wrong here. We're just kind of making a suggestion. Okay, so I have basically my, sky starry objects. Now, for the sky part, you're going to just kind of remember, we kind of want a big swirl. So I took my light blue and I'm gonna make some swirly looking lines. I'm gonna add some dark blue in there. Okay, and then depending on how you wanna do it, you can kind of just start to kind of fill in. I'm just pressing pretty light because what I'm gonna do then, I still have some yellow on my finger, but that's okay. You're gonna start to kind of swirl the colors, blend them. So again, remember that Vincent van Gogh did little lines across his sky, but we also want it to be a kind of a solid blue. We don't want much white showing. So we're gonna go back and just kind of roughly color in the sky. I'm doing the darker blue that's in your packet. I'm just gonna get close to my stars. And again, I'm not pressing super hard. It's also cool because this is watercolor paper, so it's textured. You can see it has little kind of lines as I am coloring, which is really neat too. Okay, now I could go back and add a little bit of, I'm gonna blend some other blue in there. Okay, and then I'm gonna take my finger. I'm pushing pretty hard and I'm just gonna rub it to kind of fill it in. I'm gonna go around my stars and around my moon. Okay, now I wanna go in and add, if you remember again from our picture, he has lines all around. So I'm gonna go back and add some lines. And it can be kind of messy because it's just an impression of what the sky would look like. I'm gonna use some light blue. Now, if you wanna add some northern lights to it, what colors would we need for northern lights, do you think? When I was out the other day, I guess it was night, wasn't it? There were pinks and greens. So I might wanna add some little splotches of red. We don't have a pink, but red would be great to kind of show that. Maybe we add a little bit of green in there, which would be kind of cool. And again, we don't want anything to be really solid, so we're gonna go back and smear it. We can also add some white in there. So if there's some places where you think, you know, it's kind of dark, we can add some white. See how that almost, all my oil pastels are rolling off the table here. We can add some white. We're layering on top. And if there's areas where you feel like here I can see with my star, I didn't quite get close enough, we can go back and carefully add more color. we rub. Again, you can take, if you want to take a Kleenex. See how that really smears it good? You have to really hold on to your paper though, because it wants to rip or get away from you. You don't want that to happen. See, I'm going around my stars, and it's okay if you get some smeared in with the stars, that's okay. Go right up to the edges. This edge over here, see how that smears? Not cool? All right, what do you think of the sky there? Pretty neat, huh? Now remember in the foreground then, he had some like hills or mountains, and then some houses, but we're gonna do that with the paper. So we're just gonna put kind of a suggestion, a little darker, of maybe some hills. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of green here in there too, to show kind of maybe there's kind of a grass on the hills. I'm gonna add a little bit more darker over here. We want it to kind of mix on top of each other. Maybe a little more darker to imply that they're kind of a rolling hill. What do you think of that? Okay, now for the foreground, you're gonna think about what you want to add. So you have a piece of black paper in your kit. And again, we're gonna be doing this so it is not real perfect. So we're gonna do some tearing. So when you tear, I hold one part with 2 fingers and I can tear towards me with the other. So if I was going to do kind of a bush or a tree, okay, I could tear there, and then I could tear, maybe this is the other part of the trunk, and then the top part. If you want some branches, we can tear it off the paper there. Again, just a kind of just a rough image of what a tree, it's kind of fun to tear paper, might look like. Now, that's way too big, of course, so I might have to tear the end off here. Okay, and then I might want some foreground here. So if I think about how your black paper is the same width as your paper, you can just do kind of a background all the way across. That was kind of fun. And we can glue it down. Now I can see here I have a little bit of white, so I'm going to fill that in with maybe a little more green. Add some blue on top of that. Do the rub. We're massaging the paper, giving it a massage. Okay, I like that. So we'll take our good old glue stick, brand new. I just love the way those look. Now remember, when you glue, you want to get all the way to the edge of your paper that you're gluing. This is purple, so you can kind of see it on there. If you get it on the table, that's okay. I'm gonna put my tree on top, so. And we line up the sides. And then we rub it on, massage it on. And I'm gonna put my tree right there. So what else could we put on here? If you didn't quite get, I didn't get glue all the way to the top. There we go. So we could put something in here. Maybe we want to do some houses. So we could just rip some little rectangles. Maybe we make a tall one. So we could put those in on here like this and make kind of like some houses, an idea of houses. You might even be able to use your oil pastels and draw little windows in those houses, a door. Because what's really cool about these is you can draw white on top of black, which you can't do with crayons real great. Maybe this one's gonna have more of a yellow light glowing. It'll be like an apartment house, so we'll put 3 windows in that one. And then we can glue those in. Now, you're gonna say, well, why are those houses so little and we got this giant tree? So think about perspective. It probably is a case where these houses are farther in the background, they're farther away, and the tree is closer to us, so that's why it looks bigger. Does that make sense? So that's how it is here in Vincent van Gogh's as well, where he has his houses are little and this tree object is closer in. So you can go ahead and add as many of those little houses as you'd like. You still have a lot of paper left. Maybe you want to add a bigger one. That's cool. You could put, you can put some double windows. Maybe you want to add, let me glue this in and I can show you something else you could do. You could add a smokestack, because if it was a cold winter night, there might be somebody who has their fireplace going. So there's a black oil pastel. You could make a little chimney, and then we have some gray. You could add some, that's pretty cool. Or maybe some white smoke coming out here. Okay, so there's all kinds of neat things you could do in the foreground. Could you make a little animal, perhaps? You could tear a little animal. So does our Starry Night look anything like Vincent van Gogh's? Maybe a little bit. But that's the whole idea, is that we don't want it to look perfect. We don't want it to look exactly the same. We are inspired by that famous painting. So have fun with your oil pastels, and what else could you do with them? You now have another sheet of paper. You still have some black paper left, I'm guessing. Could you make another one similar? Could you do a scene where it's daytime, and maybe instead of stars and northern lights, you could put clouds and maybe some birds up in the sky. So enjoy working with these materials, and I hope you had a fun time doing your Starry Night painting. Thanks so much.